Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First conversation, we got to bring you the latest that's happening out of Russia as Russia is testing nuclear missiles. Yes, folks, they are testing intercontinental nuclear missiles. We'll talk about the implications and impact of just doing these tests with Dr. Gerald Horn, who's been giving us some great analysis about this situation. Also, Elon Musk's quest for free speech. Can it really be achieved on a private platform? We're going to have that conversation. We're going to be checking in with tech expert Steph Humphrey, Tech Life with Steph, to give us some insights about this whole situation. Also, folks, Black women struggle with unequal pay and student debt. We talked to Nikichi Tafi to give us some insight as to about what Black women need to do and how the system needs to change. And then lastly, folks, we're going to give you some of the latest updates about the situation where an 8-year-old boy was placed in a police car in handcuffs for simply stealing a bag of Doritos. Question is, was this a scared straight tactic, or was this the wrong lesson to teach a Black boy about not stealing? We'll have that discussion later. So all of that and a whole lot more. Stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the show. We got a big conversation, so let's jump right in. We know that the latest coming out of Russia, folks, they apparently are now testing nuclear missiles. Yes, I'm saying it just like that. Nuclear missiles, intercontinental nuclear missile. This has gotten on everybody's radar. And this is just one of the big concerns that the global community is trying to deal with as they look at this whole situation. I want to share with you just some of the latest updates on this. This is coming out of Ukraine, out of Russia, excuse me. And this situation is already at a tense point. Russia has been moving around in the Ukraine, of course, has backed off some of its troops from some of the big targeted cities. But now they're saying under Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, he's saying that he has created this missile, that the defense ministry for Russia is so proud of this capability that they are going to use it, and people will think twice, rather. He said that the folks will think twice before they start to impede on the agenda of Russia. We want to bring in Dr. Gerald Horn, who is a professor from the University of Houston. He's been doing our analysis on this whole situation as he looks at the issue of race and war and culture. And so, Dr. Gerald Horn, thank you so much, dear brother, once again, for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I want to make sure I want to put this thing right, because you've been sounding the alarm. You've been sounding the alarm. And this is, for me, Dr. Horn, this is not a moment where we're like, oh, I told you so. This is not a moment like that, right? But and specifically, you've been sounding the alarm saying, look, this thing can go from 0 to 100 real quick. And it can go into a very, very uncharted space where we're seeing this situation that like we're seeing today. First test launch of his intercontinental ballistic missiles. Putin said it would give countries that threaten Moscow something to think about. He said this truly unique weapon will strengthen the combat potential of armed forces, reliably ensure Russia's security from external threats, and provide food for thought for those who, in the heat of frenzied, aggressive rhetoric, try to threaten our country. Dr. Horn, what is really happening? Is this just a man who is just putting it out there, or should United States of America and other countries across the globe, should we be calling his bluff? How do we handle the situation?
Well, I think our constituency should take this quite seriously. You may have heard the rather striking comment of one of Mr. Biden's closest comrades, speaking of Senator Christopher Coons of Delaware, who on the Sunday chat shows suggested that the United States needs to put boots on the ground in Ukraine if they want to prevent Ukraine from losing. That is to say, many of the brothers and sisters who are in the US military may find themselves, if they're not careful, dodging projectiles, dodging bullets in Central and Eastern Europe. I think that this crisis in Eastern Europe is a product of many factors. One is that over recent decades, the United States has been the equivalent of a Floyd Mayweather of fighting the Little Sisters of the Poor, as opposed to fighting Manny Pacquiao or Earl Spencer. In other words, the United States has been invading Grenada, a population of about 120,000. It's been sanctioning Cuba, a population of 11 million. It has invaded Libya, a population of about 11 million. And it has not prepared the United States for deal with someone that is relatively its own size. Speaking of Russia, which by some measures has more nuclear warheads than the United States of America does, which is saying something. And as Mr. Putin's comment today suggested, is quite capable of threatening the United States with nuclear holocaust. Obviously, the United States needs to heed the caution of the peace forces in this country and around the world who are calling for de-escalation and negotiation. But alas, that does not seem to be on the agenda right now.
So it's not on the agenda right now. And how do you rein in a world leader from taking this type of bold step? And I'm saying that because it was also reported today, Dr. Horn, that there were another round of sanctions that were going to be hitting Russia, to one of Russia's top banks that is run by a Russian oligarch. And so, again, that is putting more strain on Russia. I also came across a report as well that Putin is feeling the stress and strain now, that he has told his people that the sanctions are hurting Russia. And then, of course, we know that the people in Russia are trying to seek refuge from this man and his ambitions. So we're at a very, I think, at a crazy place right now with how do you deal with somebody who feels like they're backing up, their back is up against the wall. And I think that's the last place you want Putin to be, or anybody, because if your back is up against the wall, Dr. Horn, you're going to fight like hell to preserve your own life.
Well, there are two ways to look at the crisis from Moscow's point of view. One is that Moscow and Russia is suffering from these sanctions. The other is that those who are imposing the sanctions are also suffering. I need only point to the rise in the cost of living, inflation, not only in the United States, but in Western Europe. You see that every time you fill up your gasoline tank. You see a rise in food prices in particular, since Russia is a major producer of fertilizer and is also a major producer of agricultural crops. And so I think that it would be wise for both sides to de-escalate and negotiate, but it does not seem to be in the cards right now. You might have heard of this important meeting that took place recently between Mr. Biden and those who might be considered the merchants of death, speaking of the leaders of the military-industrial complex in the United States of America, that is to say Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, et cetera, because what's happening right now is that the United States is sending so large an arsenal to Ukraine that there is a danger and fear that the United States' own defense is being weakened. Indeed, there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal just a few days ago that suggested that this might be an optimal moment for China to invade Taiwan, the rebel province off the southern coast of China, which is nominally independent, but which China claims as its own, that would cause another crisis for Washington. And there is a fear that Washington would not be able to respond effectively. This at a moment when we're constantly told that the United States should be pivoting towards Asia. And given that strategic imperative, one has to wonder, if China is the big enchilada, why is the United States being bogged down in a quagmire in Central and Eastern Europe?
Mm, mm. And then that brings up another level of concern. And as far as and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dr. Horn, we haven't seen China really getting intimately involved in this whole conflict. China has still been on the outskirts, as far as I'm seeing. Is that a correct assessment?
Well, I would say that China has done a good job of cloaking its alliance with Russia, but Washington realizes that it's just a head fake, because Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen gave a striking speech in the United States just a few days ago, where she suggested that nations that do not sanction Russia will be subjected to sanctions themselves. That was seen as a thinly veiled threat directed at the People's Republic of China.
Right.
What that suggests is that this crisis is rapidly spinning out of control.
And I'm glad that you brought that point up, because this comes right out of the playbook that we often have seen from the United States, from our government. The playbook is we're going to move forward on a cause that we think is a noble cause, so that's it, whether it works for our interest, and then we're going to bully other countries to fall in line with our cause, and then if they don't, they're going to feel the wrath of the United States. And I'm wondering, with that level of messaging, is it really going to give us any type of benefit or gain that we are seeking to make, considering, again, we still don't have the political will of the whole country behind this effort in terms of putting boots on the ground, considering the fact that we still have our military that's spread out across the globe. And so to try to galvanize those forces is going to be another Herculean task. I mean, considering all these things, can we continue to walk like we carrying the big stick?
Well, I would say no, but pay careful and close attention to what's going on in Africa right now, because the United States and its allies have decided strategically that it can no longer maintain a normalized relationship with Russia. However, with the Western Europeans heavily dependent upon natural gas from Russia, they're going to have to get natural gas from somewhere. That somewhere happens to be Algeria. If they don't get the petroleum from Russia, they're going to have to get it from somewhere. That happens to be Nigeria and Angola, amongst other nations. There is a rare element called palladium, which is necessary for the catalytic converters, which, by the way, thieves are stealing from automobiles because they're so valuable. If you don't get your palladium from Russia, you have to get it from South Africa. If you don't get your uranium for nuclear plants, such as you have in Perfusion in France, if you don't get it from Russia, you have to get it from Namibia. However, what Washington is doing is saying that Europe and the United States will become more heavily dependent upon Africa for these rare resources. However, that also suggests that the United States may want to make sure that governments in place in these African nations are friendly, if not beholden, to the United States, which many of them are not. And that suggests a more dedicated interference in the internal affairs of African states. Indeed, you're probably following what's happening in Pakistan, where you had a prime minister who was forced out of office, who said that the reason was that Washington thought he was too close and too chummy with Moscow. What has befallen Prime Minister Imran Khan of Pakistan may be the fate of prime ministers and presidents in Africa if we're not careful.
And those are I think those words, if we're not careful, are the words that we need to hold on to at this moment. Very delicate, sensitive situation that we're seeing here. And I'm trying to figure out, how do we're getting closer, and I don't know if I can't tell, Professor, if Putin is going to really use these missiles. Because if he decides to use these ballistic missiles, this is what they call the Sarmat. If he decides to use these missiles, I just would not know how to really respond or react if he decides to use these missiles in Ukraine. Ukraine has been, and take a look at this, folks. Look at this. These are the tests that were done in Russia today of their new missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles. If he decides to use this in just Ukraine, what would be the implication of that, Dr. Horn?
Oh, my goodness. The implications would be quite dire, quite grave. And in fact, as I've suggested on your program previously, the fate of the planet is basically resting upon the slender thread of lawyers in Moscow agreeing with lawyers in Washington. Lawyers in Washington say that the United States sending a major arsenal to Ukraine that does not make the United States a co-combatant, nor does it make Poland and Germany, U.S. allies, co-combatants, even though they're the staging ground for the shipping of these weapons into Ukraine. If lawyers in Moscow do not agree, that would suggest that Moscow has the right to see Germany, Poland, and the United States as co-belligerents, co-combatants who are worthy of being attacked. Attacked, for example, by this new missile that we're highlighting this afternoon. I should also say that we're back to the bad old days of the Vietnam War, when the peace movement was saying that the United States could not afford both guns and butter, that it could not afford both to fight a war and attend to domestic needs. There was a striking article in the New York Times just yesterday that suggested that Black men are dying on the streets of Los Angeles, unhoused, unsheltered, homeless Black men at record rates. Right. So one has to wonder, how does the United States get the gumption to spend billions on sending weapons to a war that might wind up in a Holocaust in Central and Eastern Europe, while its own citizens, particularly Black male citizens, are dying like flies in the streets of our major cities?
Let me just tell you, it's so interesting you made that point. One of our watchers, Cedric and Nicole, posted this: handle our own needs right here in our country, like combating the rising tide of racism that we need to do something about yesterday. And I think to that point, and to your point, Doc, that we got citizens in this country that are really struggling right now. You mean to tell me the resources that could potentially help citizens? And this is why, you study politics, you understand world affairs, you understand the connection and the impact that it has on race, and of course Black history. But this is the reason why I say, Doc, that the United States is going on a downward path. We're like going into hell with gasoline underwear on, because you could do the right thing for people in this country, but it's at every opportunity. It's always a missed opportunity in this country, Doc, where you could do right by your citizens, whether they're Black or white, Asian, Latino. You could really do right if you, in a matter of, and I think, we've been in, Russia and Ukraine's been in this conflict for, I think, going on 2 months. You mean to tell me $13 billion or even $1 billion can be raised for that effort, but then when you look at the long-standing systemic issues facing Black people, facing poor whites in this country, facing Latino people, you mean to tell me y'all got to talk about it, negotiate, figure it out? But just, it seems like, and I mean, how the rate and speed of government, to come up with being able to allocate that type of funding and resources in a short period of time, and then to continue to leave your own citizens in peril. It is a huge slap in the face of the American people. And I don't understand. It's like, we hear president after president after president that says, we're going to try to do the right thing. We're going to try to do the right thing. And then when you have the opportunity to do the right thing, guess what? You just watch that opportunity walk on by. And you all, and it's the sad part about it, and I'm just expressing just a very real frustration. The sad part about it is because this country has done so much pain and injustice to not just Black people. We could talk about that all day, but to so many of its citizens that you like almost want to. It's like you want the United States to fail. And I'm serious. Like you just want, and you're not trying to be anti-American or unpatriotic or all of those things, but you're just simply hurt because you've been lied to for so long. You've been seeking justice for so long. You've been wanting this country to do right, the government to do right for so long. You just, after a while, you just like, you know what? I don't care. And I think that's a sad place for any constituent or citizen to be in when they in their relationship with their own government.
Well, the situation may be even more serious, dire, and grave than your impassioned words tend to indicate. What we have not discussed thus far is something that I would hope is on the agenda of the Congressional Black Caucus. What I mean is that Mr. Biden has suggested that the United States will open its doors to 100,000 refugees from Ukraine. I understand that at the San Diego-Tijuana border crossing, that Ukrainians are waltzing across the border into the United States as we speak. I don't have to remind your audience about what happened on the Texas-Mexico border just weeks ago when Haitians were roughhoused and manhandled, right, as if they were dogs, and many of whom were still thirsting to get a place in line to get into the United States of America. Even worse is the fact that the influential columnist for the New York Times, Bret Stephens, just suggested the other day that the United States should put a green card in the hand of any Ukrainian who wants to come to the United States. Now, for those who may not be familiar, that is an immigration card that allows one to work and enjoy benefits. There are people around the globe who would give their right arm to get a green card.
Right.
It's oftentimes suggested by screenplay writers when they write their scripts that you put your characters into a state of pressure or crisis because that reveals character. This is what's happening to the United States right now. It's in a place of crisis and pressure, and the character that's being revealed is not very pleasant. Indeed, some might suggest that it reeks of white supremacy.
I love how you said that. State of crisis and pressure, and that's what will reveal your character. And I think you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, the United States have shown its character so many times that is, you have a glimmer of hope that the right thing can be done and will be done. But there's so much evidence to show you that the pattern of abuse, the pattern of neglect, the pattern of injustice continues to hold it. Just in that simple thing of, making way, rolling out the red carpet for Ukrainian refugees, that wasn't done for Haitian refugees. That wasn't done for the Black students, African students who were stuck in Ukraine since the beginning of this crisis. That hasn't been done. So once again, missed opportunities to rebuild and to restore the trust. And I don't understand it. And it seems like you would think that this government would get it. You would think they would get it, Dr. Horn. They don't get it. Either they don't get it or they just don't care. It's just that simple now. It's like, okay, you don't get it, or you just that slow, you just don't understand, or you know what? We're gonna chalk it up as you just don't care at this point. You don't care about us. Michael Jackson said it. They don't care about us. And at this point, that's what I feel like is happening. And it's unfortunate because I know that this situation, based upon how things have gone in the past, this thing could go spiral out of control. You said it earlier in your remarks. It is getting to a place where it's not going to be able to be manageable. It's going to get to a place where there's going to be more rhetoric. I think I foresee this thing spiraling out of control, and the United States of America is going to be pulled into a situation, and the American people, we're going to have to feel the brunt of it.
Well, that argues for the point I made a moment or two ago, which is that the Congressional Black Caucus needs to be intervene as a body. For example, the Congressional Black Caucus in particular should be quite concerned that you have a number of African and Caribbean nations who have decided to be neutral with regard to this conflict. It probably has something to do with your aforementioned point, the maltreatment and mistreatment of Black students who are seeking refuge in Poland, the US ally, a major beneficiary of US aid, but are being maltreated and mistreated in a way that makes what's happening to Haitians on the Texas-Mexico border seem mild by comparison. So to return to the point where we began, this launching of this new intercontinental ballistic missile marks a new stage, a ratcheting up of tensions. And if we're not careful, we'll be enduring the nightmare scenario, which is a nuclear conflict between the two heavyweight nuclear powers of planet Earth, a consequence too dire and ghastly to contemplate as we speak.
Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez said it last month. The prospect of nuclear conflict, once unthinkable, is now back within the realm of possibility.
Oh, God. And
that is, I think that's the sad state of affairs. Dr. Horn, we got to let you go, but I truly appreciate you as always. We will certainly bring you back as we continue to get more developments in this whole situation. Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. Wow. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears and talk about tech. We talked a little bit about Elon Musk, but have we really discussed the implication, the impact of Elon Musk's quest for free speech? We'll be checking in with tech expert Stephanie Humphrey to give us some insight about his quest. So the conversation is coming up next, so stay with us. That's all happening in the second 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
Folks, we have been hearing about the big announcement coming from Tesla founder Elon Musk. First, it was the fact that he bought 9% of the shares, making him one of the top shareholders for the social media platform Twitter. Then the announcement came that he was pursuing buying the platform between an estimated $41 to $43 billion valuation. Now it has been this, and now the latest development in this story is that he is seeking to get financial backers for this effort. All the while, folks, Elon Musk has been going on various interviews and having conversations. He did a TEDx discussion just a few days ago, but he talks about how important it is for him to create a place for free speech, which is why we wanted to have this conversation today, because is it possible? Is it really, really possible for one man and a private company to ensure free speech to all Americans without government intervention? Is that possible? We wanted to bring in a technical expert, tech expert, and she has been doing a number of having conversations both on her social media platform as well and in other spaces. But she is a dynamic woman that understands the ins and outs of the tech world and tech space. So we want to welcome to the airways of the culture here on Black Star Network. You've seen her on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Had to bring her on here as well. Steph Humphrey, who is the founder of Tech Light with Steph. Steph, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. All right, Steph, let's talk a little bit about this. I want to put up this first quote. This is directly from Elon Musk, where he talks about this whole idea of creating, or at least getting, this platform for free speech. Keenan, let's put on quote 1. He said, quote, "I think it's very important for there to be an inclusive arena for free speech. Twitter has kind of become the de facto town square." Okay, so I want us to jump into that. Look at your face, Steph. We didn't even start the conversation yet, sis. But I think it's interesting, right? Because it's like, now we also know that Twitter is putting up some resistance to one man owning this major platform, right?
Yes.
So they call it the poison pill.
Yeah.
And basically they're saying, look, we're going to, as the board, we're not going to allow you. You may have a significant amount of shares, but we're still not going to allow you to have full ownership without getting a consensus from the board, right? So here's the thing. If he is looking at this for being free speech, my big question is that even a realistic goal?
No. And I don't believe that is his goal either. I think he is using that as sort of a justification for what he's doing. But I don't believe, Elon Musk cares about free speech one way or the other, here or anywhere else. I think Elon Musk is the world's biggest troll. And I think he was upset with the way Twitter and the SEC sort of low-key censored him back in 2018 when he made those comments about Tesla stock. And I think this is his way to get back at them. He's a ginormous, grown teenager. And I think he's having fun at Twitter's expense, at the SEC's expense, at the public's expense, just sort of putting us through all of these changes and keeping his name in our mouths.
So this is just a PR stunt, you think?
Honestly, yeah, I really do. I don't believe he cares I don't believe he cares enough about free speech to make that his cause in this case. I think there are some points that he has made that are legitimate, as far as Twitter needing, and all social media platforms needing, to show a little bit more transparency around the type of content moderation they do and why they do it. But at the end of the day, these are, businesses. They're not the government. We throw this free speech term out there like we're entitled to do it under any circumstances. And we're not. We're just not. You know, I don't think people really have a even basic foundational understanding of what the First Amendment says and guarantees. And all it does is says that the government can't put you in jail for what you say. It doesn't say anything about I should be able to, you know, dox people on a platform because Twitter's the de facto town square. So what? It's still a publicly held company that is not necessarily, you know, beholden to the same, you know, rights and privileges that are ensconced in our Constitution. It just doesn't work that way. And I don't know that there is a way to make it work that way.
Yeah. The other part about this is I'll jump to this point with the actual Communications Decency Act actually says about free speech. And I want to, you know, Keenan, if we can throw in the quote number 3 for this, because I want to show people. So there is a law.
It's called Section 230, and it is
Section 230.
Yes, it is. It's been in dispute since they created it. This is what is protecting social media platforms right now from any sort of consequence of the content that is on their platforms. This is what, you know, you talked about in your intro, like what could the government do? What sort of government intervention could happen to prevent the unfortunate situation? I think if Elon Musk becomes the owner of Twitter, he's going to take the company private. He's already said he's going to take the company private, and I think that's going to leave the door open for rampant abuse, misuse, misinformation, and disinformation on that platform.
Oh, no doubt.
It's going to be an absolute free-for-all. However,
yeah,
the repeal of Section 230 may prevent that from happening.
So I want to, Keenan, let's throw that back on the screen, brother, because I want people to really understand the significance of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So we're essentially saying that no one is held liable
at all.
No one is held liable. The platform is not going to be held liable. The users aren't going to be held liable. So no one is held liable for whatever is said on these social media platforms.
That's right.
And it opens the door for Pandora's box. It is, of course, there have been many conversations about everything from security to content and hate speech on these platforms. So nobody's, I mean, so
nobody's responsible.
So you could do whatever you want on social media. And the only thing that they can do, because these are still private companies, they still have the power to take down or to censor the content to a degree, right? Because they're private companies. These are they're
publicly traded companies, but they do still have a responsibility to deal with child sexual abuse materials, that kind of, like anything that is actually illegal. So like I said, child sexual abuse material, you can't, threaten people, that there are certain things that are not protected by free speech in this country. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater type stuff.
Right. Even though you can, if you dig deep enough on all these platforms, you can find some weird stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the problem. They can't catch anything. They do make the effort and the attempt. I think they could all do a much, much better job around content moderation, but they do make the attempt to catch these things. But other than those, most egregious cases that actually are illegal, everything else is fair game. Even if it's not true, even if it is intentionally misleading, even if it is intentionally inflammatory, anything else on these platforms right now is fair game. And these platforms know it because they are hiding behind that Section 230 banner.
So now are we, and I've said this before, and I'm saying it just as a user, and I mean, I don't live on social media, but I do understand that there could potentially be some benefit and there's some value to it. But just as a user, I mean, should we be calling for regulation? Because I'm thinking at this point, and I know that in other countries you have what they call that state-run media. You know what I mean? The government has the right to censor certain information. But I'm seeing it in these social media spaces: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, all of these social media platforms. Should there be some real regulations, not like some soft regulations, but like real regulations?
I think all we would need to do is get rid of Section 230, because once you can hold the company liable for the content published on their platform, that opens them up to lawsuits. So if I've been harmed in any way, even just emotionally, by someone's content, you know, I could potentially lodge a lawsuit against one of these companies and have them held responsible for allowing that content to exist on their platform. You know, it's going to open up a floodgate, which is going to completely, you know, clog the courts and things like that. However, I think it would also force these companies to do a better job at the content moderation that they're supposed to be doing and protecting us.
Okay, so we talked about that side of it, but the other side of it also, Steph, is the fact that you have conservatives and liberals, but let's start with the conservative side. The conservatives are hoping that this Elon Musk deal goes through because they feel like if it goes through, and by him advocating free speech, that's going to open the door then in the platform for their followers, for their ideologues to jump on, for their biggest hero, Donald Trump, to come back on, right? And I'm wondering, okay, that's on the conservative side. On the liberal side, they're like, okay, we got to look at the hate speech, we got to look at the racist talk, the talk against LGBTQIA communities, the whole thing there. And there are some real concern that this level, that platform will serve to erode democracy in some way, shape, or form. Like, that's threatening democracy. Matter of fact, President Obama is going to have a major speech. My producer was telling me this earlier today. President Obama is going to have a major speech. I think it was today, where he talked about, you know, the technology and the potential threat to democracy. Absolutely. So you got these two competing interests, and I'm just wondering to myself, like, what are you going to bring to the table, Elon Musk? I mean, seriously.
I don't know
if
that
the government. And
there's
I'm not saying
nothing
the
he can
government
even
always the
bring.
smartest
Like,
people
what
in the
can he
room.
bring if he is able to actually, you know, improve the AI part of the content moderation? I mean, you know, they need to add tons more human moderators, but that's a different story. But if he is able to actually improve the AI part of content moderation that looks for keywords and specific phrases and things like that, that can keep Twitter relatively civil, you know, I might make the argument that maybe we let him give that a try, but I don't believe that he is capable of doing that, number one. And I don't even believe that he cares to do that. I think he actually wants Twitter to be this free-for-all where everyone just gets to say whatever they want. And the world just doesn't work that way. And humanity just doesn't work that way. So I don't know that he brings anything valuable to the table or to the conversation. And you know, besides getting those conservative voices back on the platform and being able to, you know, talk ad nauseum about whatever they want to without fear of being canceled, basically.
The former president, spoke at Stanford University earlier today. This is one of the things that he said. This is from President Obama. He said, I think it is reasonable for us as a society to have a debate and then put it in place a combination of regulatory measures and industry norms that leave intact the opportunity for these platforms to make money, but say to them that there are certain practices you engage in that we don't think are good for society. And so he said this at a conference on disinformation, and this was organized by the University of Chicago and the Atlantic. And he just said that today. that you got to have. And he said the reason he wanted to have this conversation, or at least he wanted to speak on this issue, is that he's been talking to industry leaders. He's been talking to community organizers and activists. He's been talking to a number of people who said that they have been impacted significantly by social media. Mm-hmm. And so he's trying to, in his own Obama-esque way, he's trying to bring some peace into this like raging debate about this platform. My thinking is now that we're at this space, does it put Twitter, does it make it too political for its less affluent users? Because people may not be jumping on Twitter no more. People are Facebook has said that their biggest competition in terms of content is TikTok.
Yeah.
Instagram versus TikTok. So we're like, are people going to start tuning out this whole idea of sharing, discussing ideas, and people just want to see, people doing dances and
it's funny because it's funny because I talked about this on my podcast that I would most likely either leave Twitter if Elon Musk was able to purchase the platform, or that my presence there would be significantly decreased, only because I would not feel safe in that space, without the more stringent, content moderation tools and practices that should be there. I don't know that I would feel safe to be there saying anything. I think a lot of people feel that way. I don't know that we would see people leaving en masse, maybe like we would expect them to. I don't know how that plays out for Twitter employees who are also not happy at all with this potential, development with the company. So it's where we'll have to see. I think Twitter is still very relevant to your point about, are people on TikTok or Instagram or wherever. I think people are on platforms for specific reasons. And I think Twitter's platform is somewhat of a town square. It is, I think, the place where more people get their news than anywhere else. I think it's a place where journalists, can thrive and get sources and talk about issues and things like that. Yeah. So I think Twitter has its use case, has its very specific use case. So I don't know that it would be threatened necessarily by these other platforms, but I do think, we would see it change significantly, and the behavior on there change significantly if it was taken private.
Mike V, who is one of our loyal watchers, Steph, he brought up this point. Black people will need to create their own social media platform as a safe space for liberation.
Black people already got their own social media platform. Fanbase. Isaac Hayes III runs a platform called Fanbase, which is very sort of Instagram-esque as far as its user interface. But we already got our own platform. So head over to Fanbase.
That's right. So we know, Big Brother Roland, he is already an investor in Fanbase. He's been talking about it. He does a lot of, you're on there. A lot of people are on there. But do people still see it as the place to are we in that space right now? Do we need to like totally remove ourselves from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? And I'm just asking because we stream on these platforms.
Right. I wouldn't necessarily say we need to totally remove ourselves, because there's people on these platforms that are monetizing them to their benefit. There are e-commerce people, influencers, people are finding different ways to earn a living and make money on these platforms. So I definitely would not discourage anyone from getting that bag, however they can get it on whatever platform they can get it. But I think in the same way that we support Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn, we should support platforms like Fanbase. You know what I mean? And I am guilty of that as well. I don't do the best job I could do. I mean, I invested in the company and I have an account there, but I don't do as good a job as I could at being intentional about engaging with the platform on a regular basis. You know what I mean? I engage with Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn every single day.
Right.
But I don't do that necessarily with fan base yet. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I am going to be more intentional about doing it.
Right.
But that's what we all have to do, is be more intentional about engaging with our platforms on a regular basis if we claim to want to support our own and build our own. And why don't we have our own? Well, we do have our own, so we need to support it.
The last point on this, Steph, is that, when we see Elon Musk, and I think it's interesting that you got some black folks that really praise Elon on his ingenuity, his innovation. I think that's interesting. You obviously you've heard the same thing. People, oh man, Elon Musk, he's a genius and all of that. So, but is it like when we look at Elon Musk and I see what his attempts are with Twitter, it reminds me of Donald Trump and his Truth Social, where he said the same thing.
Right.
Hey, I want to create a space for free speech.
Right.
And we months after that's been launched,
it's a dud.
And we see
the same as Parler. There was another platform called Parler before Truth Social came out that was also supposed to be this conservative answer to Twitter and Facebook and other platforms that didn't allow them to exercise their free speech rights. But at the end of the day, people want to be where other people are. So the idea that you're going to get billions of people literally billions of people to migrate away from these already established platforms onto something new, which again is a similar reason why we're still trying to build fan base. You're trying to get a bunch of people to move to a new platform. It's just a hard thing to do, especially if the platform is not as effective as the ones that they're leaving. And I'm not saying that about fan base, but I had heard on Truth Social and Parler and those more conservative platforms that they were buggy. There were issues. They don't have the
capacity.
And they don't have the capacity. Servers are crashing and things like that. So the idea that you're going to get all these people to migrate away from where they can already comfortably have conversations is pretty slim.
Absolutely and I think that it also speaks to the fact that you might be looking at two sides of the same coin when you're talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump, right?
Absolutely.
So that is something, Steph, we're going to have to keep our eyes on this. I'm keeping up on this because I think it's a fascinating just a fascinating idea, but I'm pushing back on that. I don't know where maybe because I'm getting older, Steph, but I'm getting to the places like, no, the people really needs to have more input on this. Like this whole idea of monopolizing, quote unquote, public spaces.
Right.
It just doesn't sit well with me.
And it's not a good look. Like, when you have control over the information.
Yeah, like you can't run everything.
No.
And I think to the last point of this, that people are expecting, and I said this on the show, Steph, I'm telling you, we expect billionaires to get us out of our social, political, economic.
And to even care. We expect them to care. And they're not obligated to care. And I don't know that they do. We expect them to care, but that work has to start from the bottom up, not the top down.
Yeah. Look, the oppressed in this country have never been saved by billionaires.
Mm-mm.
And I hope people understand why we say that. You're not going to get saved by a billionaire. They're so and I know and I think that the cultural side of it is these people are quote unquote likable. They're cool. You know what I mean? Their PR, their marketing brand.
And we associate money with intelligence, with attractiveness, with achievement and accomplishment. So we think just because somebody has some money, they must somehow be special, and that's not necessarily the case. It's probably less the case than it is.
That is very true, Steph. I got to bring you back, sis.
No doubt.
We're going to keep our eyes on the situation. So I'd love to have you back to talk to us about this development of this particular stories and other tech issues. How can people learn more about the work you're doing?
They can just follow me all around the web at Tech Life Steph.
There it is. Tech Life with Steph, folks. Steph Humphrey checking in as we talk about the situation, the potential buying of Twitter by Elon Musk. Steph, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Black women and how Black women are serving at in a crazy space right now. According to a number of new reports, Black women are struggling not just with unequal pay, but Black women are carrying the debt of so many in terms of student loans. So we'll have that conversation with Nkechi Tafi to give us some insight on how Black women can get out of that space. That conversation is up next, so stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Phenomenal first hour. We talked to Dr. Gerald Horn about what the situation is in Russia and Ukraine. We just got off got out of the conversation with Steph Humphrey of Tech Life with Steph to talk about Elon Musk. Folks, if you haven't had a chance to, see our first hour, make sure you go back to our playback and make sure that you let people know that we're having these very, very important conversations. And we're having them with people that you should definitely listen to. So phenomenal first hour. All right, let's move on to another part of the conversation, which is the struggle and the fate of Black women. We're finding, according to a number of new reports, that Black women, and I want to share this quote with you, and Keenan, we could throw this up here very quickly. When we look at unequal pay and more student debt, Black women are carrying the burden, folks. According to a latest report by the Hechinger, by Teen Vogue, they put this out there. Women hold 2/3 of Americans' $1.6 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. And according to a 2021 American Association of University Women report, that report found that Black women carry about 22% more student debt than white women do, and more student debt than any other demographic group. Can y'all believe that? Check this out. Also, it says that Black women are marginalized, and this is coming from a woman by the name of Brittany Williams, who co-authored a report called How Black Women Experience Student Debt. She said that Black women are marginalized due to their race and gender, putting them among the lowest earners in the labor market. The racial wealth gap leaves Black women with fewer resources to pay back their loans because for Black women, more degrees do not necessarily equal more money. Oh my gosh. We have to have a discussion about this. And so we wanted to bring on a sister who has been working in the area of equity and justice. She is an author, and she is also the CEO of the Taifa Group and the director of the Reparations Education Project. We want to welcome to the airwaves of the culture here on the Black Star Network, Sister Nkechi Taifa. Sister Nikichi, thank you so much for joining us. How are you this afternoon?
I'm thrilled to be with you, Raji. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for wanting to have this conversation because I wanted to have a discussion about the stress and the strain that's put on the back of Black women in this country. And so when we had a chance to get you on the show, I was like, Sister Nikichi got to bring it to me. She got to lay this thing out for us to understand the dynamics of this situation. I did not know that Black women were debt, that Black women really held so much debt when it comes to the student loan conversation, because I think that's the big part about it. And so when I've been seeing people say, hey, President Biden, when are you going to actually give $50,000 to help cancel student loan debt? And we're seeing the president is still moving slow on this, even though his people around him has been saying that's still on the table. But I know that this is coming out of a stress and strain that Black women have been carrying for years. Talk to us about this situation, Sister Nikichi.
So, Brother Faraji, it's not just a situation dealing with Black women having an overage with respect to student loan debt. Everything that is out there impacts Black people more, and then Black women more. And it's historical. It's not anything that's just anything current. Way back during the enslavement era, in terms of the rapes of Black women, in terms of the brutal gynecological experiments on Black women devoid of anesthesia, where we talk about the health disparities and Black women dying in childbirth more so than white. So in just about every aspect, Black women earning less than white women, in the workplace. So it's not a surprise to me with respect to the issue dealing with student loan debt. Black women do, I will say, attend higher education at greater rates than Black men. And then as a result, then that debt there is much more so and much more greater as well. And you mentioned about Biden and the issue dealing with whether the debts, the student loan should be forgiven. When you look at the over $13 billion that was spent with respect to, rightfully so, I would say, humanitarian aid just recently to Ukraine, and you wonder,
talk about it.
Why can't those same sensitivities apply to us here in this country? Black people in particular, Black women in particular to that. And one more thing I want to say. The issue dealing with Black women is just so very daunting to me, particularly as a Black woman, because the whole adage there about all of the Blacks are men, all of the women are white. It's like you're checking up blocks. Well, are you Black? Are you a woman? We at this intersection, but it seems to just negate that whole intersection. You either have to be one or the other, as opposed to both.
That's that, and see, that's and I think we need to kind of like unpack all of these things, right? Because people are trying to figure out, especially Black women in this country, where is the relief? Where is the relief? Where is the relief for all of the hard work that I put in? When we looked at, and we've had these conversations about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, right? Everybody was like, "Oh, yes, she's doing something," and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, it's a fantastic move. We have a Black woman on the Supreme Court, but there are still so many Black women that are left behind, and that may not be going down the same pipeline that she had gone down to get to the place that she is in. So I'm wondering, like, where's the relief for Black women in this country when it comes to these long-term systemic issues like debt, like student loan debt, like unequal pay? Where should Black women and Black men who want to stand with Black women, where should we start looking for that relief?
So, in my humble opinion, I think we need to look at the Black family, okay? And not even separate men and women. It's the family that's together that we will see relief. And I think that togetherness comes with the issue of restitution and reparations for all of those issues that I've raised, both historical as well as current. There's the black-white wealth gap, but there's also that gap that we're talking about in terms of women, Black women in particular. And I don't think that there will ever be a reckoning with respect to that until these historical issues are forthrightly dealt with and resolved. And this whole issue dealing with equity, it needs to be across the board. Many times, Black people in general, Black women in particular, get the short end of the stick when these policies are passed. And then when we look at it in isolation, we look at it, okay, in terms of housing, we look at it in terms of school debt, we look at it in terms of health disparities, but we need to begin to connect the dots, okay, because they're not isolated. They all harken back to one central theme, which is the unresolved issues, I would say, that have gone on since the end of the Civil War.
So, Sister Nikishi, who's responsible for connecting the dots? Is it because I feel like there are a couple of schools of thought that are present within our conversations and certainly within our community. Some people would say the government is responsible for connecting the dots. Other people will say, well, we are responsible. Then other people will say, oh no, there's certain institutions, the organizations, depending on, if the school system or the police department, like, or corporate American Wall Street. So who's responsible for connecting the dots here?
Well, Faraji, it really is all of the above. The dots, okay. I mean, scholars, academicians, practitioners, everyone has been out there showing the linkages in there. The problem is that there has not been the concomitant incentive for a solution to those linkages that have been connected. That's where the problem lies. And we always get the short end of the stick. You could have this very same program, Faraji, talking about Black men. You can have this very, very same program, my brother, talking about Black youth. We're having it right now talking about Black women, but it is all, in my humble opinion, interconnected. And government needs to be the one to finance the solution for it. And it's not hard to come up with that because we see how quickly financing comes with people have the will and the desire to do so.
Sister Nikishi, you must have been checking out my first hour of the show, because when we were talking about, we talked to Dr. Gerald Horn, and I was talking to him about the Ukraine-Russian situation. And I said, it's funny that you can come up with 13 billion. Hell, you can come up with $1 billion in a matter of 2 months to address a situation that just popped up. But these long-term systemic issues, we got to have negotiations. We got to reach across the aisle. We got to have a commission to possibly, should we? And so we're going to create a commission to even ask the question, should we? I mean, it gets to be very frustrating after a while, because you're starting to see, and I said this in my first hour, after you either you don't care, or you choose just to disregard us. And I'm starting to get the impression, and I don't want to sound like the bitter, angry Black man or the black network, but I'm starting to get the impression you don't give a damn.
Yeah,
you don't care. You just don't care. And I know that in that, really my frustration, because I've studied histories, I've studied the heroes and sheroes of our time. I know that out of that place of not caring, it's because of disappointment and feeling hopeless. So you get angry. And that's what I think a lot of Black people are in this country. You know it, and I know it. We're just angry. And if America did right by us, and just in a very small way, now, I mean, and I'm saying small way, you looking at student loan debt, for example, and you know that relieving student loan debt would break the shackles of debt and slavery from so many Black people in this country, for Black and brown communities. But guess what? You don't even have the political will to say we're going to break them shackles. You just don't want to do it. And Sister Nikisha, I don't know as a people how we process that. So you tell me, sis. You tell me. I'm in my bag right now.
It's all good. I love you in your bag, my brother. And unfortunately, I missed the first hour. But it doesn't take a whole lot to get to the point that you made. I mean, because the handwriting is there on the wall, so very strong and so very clear. We are treated differently based by the color of the skin. And when we talked about Ukraine and the comments that we saw being made in terms of, oh, they look like they could be someone who lives next door to me. I'm talking about white people talking, or they have blonde hair and blue eyes. This surely could not be happening to them. Yet when these same things are happening to people who look like you and I, okay, we don't get that same type of concern. And even in terms of student loan debt, it's just ironic to me that in a time now when they're talking about shutting down the truthful teaching of history and truthful textbooks and all of the above, we were in these institutions, okay, learning white supremacy, okay, and we're saddled with all of this debt, with everything that we've learned with respect to white supremacy, and now they're talking about not even allowing real history to be taught. Yet we're still saddled with the debt from history from a European frame of reference. It needs to not only be forgiven, but there needs to be restitution, I would say, for the incorrect history that we have been inundated with. You're a lot younger than me, but I know when I was coming up, there wasn't even initially Black studies in the schools or anything along those lines. Thank you, that changed, and now the clock is being rolled back again. But so black women,
yeah. And so that brings me to the next point. That brings us to our next point, Sister Nikichi, which is, do we advocate for drastic change at this point, right? Like, for example, you're talking about student loan debt. That's between the colleges and universities and the banks. And the banks, right? So are we advocating for what? Because if the colleges aren't teaching us, or really the education from the colleges don't give us the type of advantage that we need, and yet it puts us at a greater disadvantage financially. So we're not getting the education that will make us better, but more getting education that's going to just simply make us more subservient to the powers that be. And then on top of that, we owe all this money to become servants and not being masters of our own fate. It's a huge slap in the face. It's insulting. And so I'm saying, do we need to have a different tone to the conversation about, okay, well, maybe we should stop putting so much emphasis on the value of this educational system, or maybe we should start looking at, I don't know, boycotting some of these colleges and universities that have put this great burden on us. I mean, from that space, because you're a scholar, what do we do in that space and in that relationship?
Well, we definitely need transformational change. We don't just need to sugarcoat over the issue. There needs to be a transformational change in this society if we really want to make a real difference, not a difference that's just sugarcoated over, but a real difference. And the colleges and the universities, they owe us. I hate to sound like a broken cord, but it was colleges and universities benefited from the enslavement era. Just about every single Ivy League institution there had its roots with respect to the enslavement. That's how they made and got their fortune. So, I mean, everything that we look at today is why I talk about connecting dots. Connect back to the past. And until we deal with that reckoning, we're just going to be spinning our wheels. And I will just say one more thing.
Sure.
There was a time during the 60s and 70s when we sought a different approach. I know I was involved in what we call the independent Black schools movement, where we sought to teach our own children, okay, true history, teaching them things from an African frame of reference and the like. People adopted African names, you know, and the like. And I think it did, in fact, make a difference. But
it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with that history, Sister Nkechi, and I know that for if you know you did for the work that you and others have done in that time, it made a huge difference. I mean, you know, Black people became more conscious as a result of other Black people saying enough is enough. We're going to create our own educational pathway. But what I think certainly now the conversation changes is because of the culture that we currently live in right now. As much as we want to believe, it is not a pro-Black culture, right? And I'm saying even among our own people, even among the Black community, right? We have this Americanized pro-Blackness. Like we're pro-Black on a t-shirt. We're pro-Black on social media. But I'm talking about pro-Black to the point where not to the detriment of other people, because I think that's crazy as well. We don't want to denigrate other people and their struggle and their value and their worth. But there's that, like the connection of being pro-Black. Around holiday time, Sister Nkechi, pro-Blackness go right out the door.
Yeah.
I know I'm stepping on somebody's toes, so I know I'm about to lose some watches today. But let's keep it real. Around holiday time in America, Christmas, and some of those other big holidays go right out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what y'all did back in the 60s was the reason that we were able to make the type of gains that we were able to make is because we disrupted the very nature of the system by saying, I'm not going to give up. I'm willing to give it all up. Whether you're talking about the Montgomery bus boycott, whether you're talking about any other major element of the civil rights or the Black Power movement, there was a sacrifice that was made. Like you can't be liberated and then not sacrifice anything along the road. Like the liberation, freedom, equity, or equality and justice requires sacrifice. That's how I understand the principles. And so we're at a place now where we want these things, but we want them based upon our own ignorance. We want it based upon our just, you know, our comfort zone. And you can't. Like, you know, when I think back to the Montgomery bus boycott, Sister Nkechi, how many months that actual boycott actually was?
Almost a year.
Can you imagine? I mean, you deciding and your friends deciding, right? Like, don't get on that bus. We walking to work today.
And that was Black women.
Black women
who were working in white folks' homes.
In one part of the city,
right?
But it had to travel all the way to clean homes, to serve, in other ways, just to make it. And guess what? They walked right back home for almost a year.
Yeah,
please. Yeah. And I'm not trying to romanticize it. I'm just simply saying, let's put it in its proper context. That's a sacrifice. You can't be liberated. You can't have freedom, justice, and equality unless you're willing to make a serious sacrifice. And that's the place that the culture right now hasn't pushed us to the point that we want to make that level of sacrifice. The culture right now has pretty much, and this is just my opinion, Sister Nkechi, the culture right now has made it comfortable for you not to sacrifice, but it also made it comfortable for you to call out to say, oh, I want this and I want that. But there's sacrifice that's required to that.
Yes, and that sacrifice, even going back to the school and equal pay, during the Rosa Parks time, those women Black women were working in white folks' homes. And then as a result of the civil rights movement, folk got jobs, but they weren't paid the same, unequal pay for the same type of work. And people did sacrifice to send the children to school. And that's where some of this debt came in, as well. So all of these dots connect, and something needs to be done about it now. And I submit that it's up to government, it's up to the Biden administration, which is in office right now, to just do away with that student loan debt and go more than just talking about equity. Reach back to the past. Let's talk about restitution and reparations.
So, Sister Nikichi, if we're talking about that level of student loan debt, then every Black political leader, I ain't talking about Tim Scott. I'm not talking about Tim Scott. Or the Democratic side, the Congressional Black Caucus, every Black political leader from the federal level down to the local level should be on board. And I'm talking about Black people should be, this shouldn't be a solo act. This needs to be a choir. There needs to be a chorus, right? And you're talking about every Black political leader putting that level of pressure on President Biden. The other day we had a conversation on this show, I think it was yesterday, we talked about how there were more lobbyists that went to Vice President Pence during the time that they were in office during the Trump administration than any other vice president. And the reason they went to him because they found him to be a stability in a very crazy administration. In this case, going to Vice President Harris, say, Vice President Harris, we put you in office, you owe this. You are a Black woman. You know exactly what the issues are. You went to an HBCU. You know exactly what the struggle is, right? And then put the fire under her and then go on to Biden with her.
Who also is in office as a result of Black people.
As a result of Black people who had 50 years, so he understands how this whole situation has gotten to this point, because he's been in office for damn 50 years, going to that president and saying, look, bruh, I know you're thinking about re-election. You need help. This needs to be a win for Black people, for Black women, for the Black community. This needs to be a win. And I mean, I don't know how else to do it. If we're going to put that political leadership, we're going to have to put the same fire under the business world and for the schools. For now, you have Harvard, you have Yale, you have these Ivy League schools that have created special programs and incentives for Black students because part of their money comes from is coming down the pike, and they need diversity. Put it to these schools, relieve the student debt. Let me ask you this, Sister Nikichi, as we wrap up this conversation. With the reparations movement, there's a lot that can be said with that, but how does this issue of student debt, unequal pay, how does that fit into the larger conversation around reparations? Should that be something that included in the reparations talk, or what?
Yeah, so when we talk about reparations, we don't just talk about the enslavement era. We talk about its living legacies down through today. And educational inequities is one of those. Health disparities, Black-white wealth gap, the criminal punishment system, and a whole system of peoplehood and nationhood. So absolutely, the Black student loan debt should be one of the remedies in the whole reparations thrust. I always say that the harms from the enslavement era and beyond were multifaceted. Thus, the remedies must be multifaceted as well. It's not just one thing, and it's not just a check. There are many different things that can come under the rubric, but it's not just ordinary public policy. Reparations is that something more. And that something more with respect to student loan debt can really be traced all the way back through as a legacy from the enslavement era. As it relates to Black.
Yes, ma'am. Sister Nikichi Taifa, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your scholarship. And we thank you for the work that you continue to do, dear sister. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. We would love to bring you back.
Thank you for having me. I'd love to come back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we're going to take another pause. When we come back, I'm going to talk to you about a situation regarding a child under the age of 10, a 9-year-old, how he was arrested for stealing Doritos. The question is, was that a great scare straight tactic, or was it a terrible lesson and a very traumatic lesson for this 10-year-old, this 9-year-old? We'll have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared. You dig?
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
All right, folks, we wanted to have a conversation. This is our final big discussion today, and I wanted to have this conversation because I saw this like trending on social media, and then when I started to look deeply into it, I was like, okay. Now, here's the situation. There is a police officer, a white police officer in Syracuse, New York, that forced a 8-year-old, I said 9-year-old, 8-year-old black boy screaming and crying into the back of a police car because apparently this black boy stole a bag of Doritos. There was this video of this whole interaction went viral. Millions of people have seen this situation. And I don't know if we can pull up the video or not, Keenan, but I want to show people. Then we want to have a conversation. Check this out.
What is y'all doing?
Guess. Take a guess what I'm doing.
Hey, he like a baby to me. Why you?
Guess what I'm doing.
I don't know what you're doing. I just see you snatching him up off the. So what? So what's going on then?
You're stealing stuff. If he breaks into your house to steal something.
Nah, man. What he selling, a bag of chips? So y'all treat me like a whole cold-blooded fucking killer?
Keep walking, dude. You don't even know what you're
keep
talking
walking.
about.
I know what I just came up and see. I know the fuck I just came up and see.
Okay, what did you see?
I see y'all snatching him up a bike like he a fucking grown-ass man. Ain't he saying it wasn't him? Fuck is y'all doing?
That's crazy. How old is he? 10 years old?
Fuck is y'all talking about, man?
That's against the law.
Fuck is y'all doing?
You cannot put that.
What is y'all doing? Take the fucking chips. If he stole some chips, I'll pay for him. I'll pay for him. You don't even know where he lives. Y'all just throwing him in the fucking car.
That's what they do. They come here.
Fuck is y'all doing? Bro? Leave him alone.
Show camera. That's all we can do.
He a kid.
Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh said in a statement yesterday that when he first saw the video, he was concerned, but there were no handcuffs used and the child was taken home. He called for the city to better support children and families and invest in alternative response options to police. Now, the boy's father, Anthony Way, told Syracuse.com that the cops who dropped off his son were friendly, but later, upon seeing the video of his son wailing and being forced into the back of a police car over a bag of Doritos, he said he wanted to lodge a complaint with the police. Now, I want to bring in Culture Crew member. She is an artist. She is an educator. My wife, Nira Muhammad, who has been doing work with children, who happens to work with children at this age of this little black boy of 8 years old. Nira, thank you so much, dear, for joining us and looking at this situation. Some people say, and essentially what the police were doing was a tactic that I often hear used in the black community, which is a scared straight tactic.
Like on Mars.
Which is why they decided not to put handcuffs on him and to return him home. This boy actually did steal something, but they wanted to show him the consequences of his action. Do you agree or disagree on how this was done?
You know, it's really hard for me to say whether or not I agree or disagree. It's hard as a mother to watch a child. It's hard as a mom and as an educator to watch a child screaming and crying about getting placed in the back of a police cruiser. But then on the flip side of that, I would rather preventative measures be taken now than when he's older, and it's not just a scare tactic. I also have been on the receiving end of being robbed by fourth graders, third and third graders who are about the same age, who are between 8 and 10 years old. I had a fourth grader go into my wallet and steal all of my money. Not only myself, but this is a kid who they tag teamed and they were going around the school stealing from all types of educators. One educator had just taken out money to get her car fixed, $400 gone out of her bag, and she had like a small office, and they snuck and went into her office and stole her money. And then most recently, I've had a student stealing. I buy treats for my class for my students, and I've had a student who keeps stealing the stuff. She's also stolen money from my co-teacher. She's gonna grow into an adult, and unfortunately, if we don't do something now to mitigate those behaviors, they're only going to get worse, because if you're a child and you think that you can get away with something, you're going to continue to do it because it's easy, because there are no consequences. So on the one hand, I don't want to see any child being put into the back of a police cruiser, especially at that age, but I don't want to see him become a grown man and spend the rest of his life in jail, because he was able to do things that were against the law as a child with no consequences. So for me, I ride this really hard fence, moral fence of wanting to see some real consequences so that they understand that when they grow up, there will be real consequences. You know, we're really big on restorative justice and restorative practices. But the thing about that, it doesn't mean that you just have a conversation with children all the time. That does not always work. The student who has gotten caught stealing from me has stole again. There were no real consequences to her stealing from me besides a conversation where she cried because she got caught. And then she turned around and stole money from someone else. So again, what do you say in a situation like that? What do you say to the person who's being robbed? Do you say, oh, well, it's okay because you got robbed by a child? You know, that was money that I needed. That was money that my the coworker had needed for her car to get fixed. That's not replaced.
Right, because the school didn't replace that money.
No, they said, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Did you like the room door?
They never brought the parent into the conversation in either of those cases?
So in the first situation where I got robbed, like my actual money, no. They knew who the student was who was stealing. Nothing ever happened. There were no suspensions. Nothing ever happened. He was just stealing, just robbing. I'm gonna rob all the teachers because guess what? There are no consequences. He could do it. No one did anything. Same thing with my student who's been stealing from me. She's done it twice. Only reason I caught her the second time because my things were actually in her bag. Like I actually caught my stuff in her bag. She still tried to deny it at first. And then her friends kind of snitched on her. She still denied it. Then the moment she got in front of the vice principal, she burst into tears crying. And I had to sit there. She became the victim.
Right.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why I do this. I just do it. And I feel bad. I asked her, was she hungry? Did she need snacks? Did she need anything? You know, you try your best to try to get to the root of the issue. Because sometimes there are underlying issues. No food at home. You know, sometimes children do it out of a lack of attention. Or for attention, so I mean there are different reasons, and you know I could go on and on and on about the different reasons that children do this, and you know you could talk to a social worker or a counselor about it. So I think from an education perspective, I'm always trying to look at the different reasons, but then on the flip side of that, I want to make sure that children are learning and understanding, especially our Black children. You will not be given those many chances in the real world. Personally, I don't think restorative practices works for Black children because that's not our reality in the real world. We don't get to make that many mistakes with no consequences in the real world. And I have an issue with us teaching Black children in schools that it's okay, just get a slap on the wrist and go back to class. That's not going to be their reality. That what we saw in that video, that's going to be their reality. But unfortunately, it'll happen in a time when we can't just say it was a scare tactic. Now they're going to actually have a criminal record.
And I think I think first and foremost, I appreciate you sharing that personal story, these personal stories, because I think that people need to get a context. It's very easy to jump to conclusions, right? To say, oh, no, the police were totally wrong because we live in a culture where police
are always wrong.
Teachers wrong, right?
Are
especially
always wrong.
With Black people, right? And Black children. Right. And I understand that. And in some cases, yes, they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side of it is that if you don't lay down the rules for your children and they go wayward and they start to be the perpetrators of like the students in your class, right? Mm-hmm. Stealing. And then if the school doesn't draw a hard line, and I'm just saying that this is in a school environment and not just in a neighborhood, if the school doesn't draw a hard line, like you are enabling certain behavior. You are saying, to your point, that, hey, it's going to be all right. And we all know, and I will dare anybody that comes on the YouTube fan or the Facebook chat and say, y'all know that she is not lying because we don't get no extra chances. Now, the police in this particular case did not harm the boy. Like I said, they didn't put any handcuffs on him.
Yeah.
They just scared the hell out of him.
Yeah.
Right? They scared the hell out of them. They could have communicated to the residents, say, hey, the guy that was doing the filming, the video guy, the police officer could pull him to the side and say, look, man, we're trying to teach this little boy a lesson.
We're not going to harm him. We're not
harm
arresting him.
You
we're
know what I mean?
literally just
we're
taking him home.
We're going to teach him. Matter of fact, you can follow the police car when we take him home.
Yeah.
That could have probably should have been done.
I get it. It could have been done.
You know, I mean, look,
I think too, like being like in like, you know, being a teacher, like I'm not gonna lie. I had a really rough day today in Miss Muhammad's class. It was a day where it was a day. And you don't know what people go through in the day. So it's so easy to say, well, you should have done this. You should have came and did that. But you don't know what else the officers went through that day. What other altercations or situations we're very insensitive to people who do jobs that we would never be able to do. And I say that because being a police officer is a very hard job. Let's just be real. Being a teacher is a hard job. Being a firefighter, nurse, a doctor, these are hard jobs. They're not always easy, and people aren't always kind to you. And so sometimes it's really in that moment when you're already going through your human emotions, it's really hard to be like, okay, let me go talk. In your mind, you're like, mind your mother. Sometimes you just want to say, mind your motherfucking business. I get that. I've been there. But I do think that, you know, you do try and you have to try to be more proactive when working with the community, especially as police officers working in Black neighborhoods. You have to try your best to be as proactive as possible. But I think that sometimes as humans, we got to show each other grace. But we also have to show ourselves grace, because it's so easy to say what a person should do in the heat of a moment. But think back to sometimes when you were in the middle of the heat of a moment and how you responded. And then afterwards, you were like, dang, I really could have handled that differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other point, the other point is, when do we stop and I know people say, well, you don't want to criminalize black students and black.
He's not criminalized. He doesn't have a record.
I trust and believe. I totally get that. But I don't know how many people, and I'm not saying that I'm all for what this police are. It's like, it's a hard place, because I've seen children who, by the time they get to third grade, folks, and let me just say this, that whole school to prison pipeline, it is not a coincidence they talk about that starting from the third grade on up. It's not a coincidence, because by the time a child gets to the third grade, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, right? By the time they get to that age where you already know the difference between right and wrong.
And they do.
And they do.
They do.
But then the mischievous nature in them takes over in some of their decision making. And when you start to do, like, it's one thing for a child to knock over a piece of glass or something like that. But when you're talking about stealing, we talked about this a lot. But when I hear stories of children stealing, that's a different level. That's not something that's not something. I mean, look, as a Black boy, you might have thought, you come across your mind like, man, damn, I really wish I could have got that candy bar or something like that. But then the other part of you comes into play, and you start to check yourself and be like, more, if I steal this, these are the potential consequences of my actions. When you start talking about stealing, I'm a huge advocate. You got to cut that snake off at its head, because
then it becomes something where they could become a klepto. It becomes something it's enjoyable. It's so funny, because I was watching 911 the other night, and they were talking about arsonists, how arsonists enjoy, it's like a rush that they get just from watching the fire burn. I think of that with people who steal habitually. They get a rush off of it. They enjoy, it's like this positive feeling that they get, this rush that they get from stealing and not getting caught. It feels good. They're sitting back. Ooh, like I felt like I'm asking my students, like I come in, I'm ready to give out treats and everything's gone. And I'm like, Where did it go? Oh man, and she's the student who was stealing from me. Dang, that's messed up. Somebody stole from you?
Wow.
Like she's like, you're getting off on this. You know that you did it. And now you're sitting back and you're enjoying watching everything else unfold. That's what I think of when I think of a thief. You enjoy it. You're starting to get off on the joy of that feeling of not getting caught.
So very quickly, let me get your take on this, because some of our folks have been saying, all right, well, it's based upon the way that you were raised. Lena checked in and said, this is something that should be taught at home. Christopher checked in and says, all about who raised you up from a child. As far as you know, and I'm just saying, based on your personal experience, have you found these children to come out of dysfunctional or quote unquote broken homes?
Yes, absolutely. These are the kids who parents have a lot of children, typically. These are the children whose parents are the route. And I'm not even trying to be rude. These are the parents that you don't even want to call to have a conversation about their child, because they're not going to be level-headed. They're not going to be mature. They're not going to want to hear you out. They're going to want to cuss you out. They're going to want to blame you. From my experiences, and these are from the children that I've seen in multiple schools that have been, they homes where there are multiple, the dads are not in the picture. Multiple dads, maybe a stepdad is around. Mom really has a lot on her plate. She really can't handle it all. And a lot of times, and then there are some cases where the moms will say that, like, I really need more help. Very rarely, but I do have a case. I have a case recently where a mom was like, I need more help. She has 5 sons and just had a little girl. The dads are not around. And they're one is in high school all the way down to 3rd grade. I have her 3rd grader. And so, yeah, like these are not the kids that are coming. These are not the kids who have parents that they know would whip their behinds for doing stuff like that. These are typically the students who have parents who might look at them. You did that. Oh, for real? Oh, you know what I mean? It's like there's no real consequence whatsoever, even at home. In fact, They may be learning the behaviors from their parents.
Yeah. And do you feel like at this point that we don't want to face that reality?
Oh, we don't. It's sad because, we look at certain people and we say, oh, they're just a kid. But children can be rapists. Children can be murderers. Watch that. It's a documentary on Netflix called Children That Kill. Children kill their own parents. 12 years old, murder their parents in bed. Children can be devious. And that's sad to say. It's scary. No one wants to think of a child that way. But adults started off as children. A lot of those behaviors start off while we're children because they go unchecked. So my thing is, I don't want to label a child, but I do want to figure out what's the issue, why it's happening, and then what can we do to prevent it from happening again. So there's multiple steps to this. I would never want to just label a child. You're just a bad kid. You're a bad seed. But we're human. You know what I mean? Like, I'm human. And I try to I just try to be as empathetic as I possibly can be, because again, you don't know what some of these children are really going through a lot at home. Yeah. Some of them really are hungry at home. Right. Some of them come here, their clothes are dirty. I mean, dirty, like visibly filthy dirty. And they don't get haircuts. They don't get their hair done. There's so many different things. And I will say I do feel very blessed that I work at a school where we actually provide the uniforms for our students. So if a student gets dirty or they rip their pants or their clothes are too small, I can go right downstairs and get them an entire new outfit. And I've done that, since I've been here. I've gotten new clothes for my students, new backpacks, all those things. So the resources really are there. I think the schools are trying to get better at providing more and more resources. We have a REST team, which is like an intervention team that works with these behaviors. We have a social worker on deck. We have a guidance counselor on deck. We have an IP specialist. We have a lot of different people at our school And I see a lot of schools in urban cities really trying to hire and fill these different positions because one, it's affecting how we as teachers can teach. If I'm trying to deal with all these behaviors with one or two students, how am I going to teach the rest of my class? So having those other providers that are able to push into the classroom or pull students out of the classroom, like our RUST team is probably one of my favorites because when behaviors and certain things happen, I pick my phone up, I shoot them a text, they're right here.
Yeah.
So, I will say we are trying our best to be proactive, but you got to understand, children are only with us for a certain amount of time a day. Then they go home. They are going to pick up the behaviors from their family and their parents and think that's right over anybody else.
Right. Well,
my
you know
mother
what?
said it's okay. My mother's like, one kid, I got a fight happened in my class today, real quick. And a student was like, well, my mother said that if somebody gets in my face to hit them. And I was like, but that's not what happened. They didn't get in your face. You got in their face. But she go home and tell her mother that somebody got in hers.
And I think that, again, when you're talking about that level of parenting or just trying to, teach a child how to think critically in various situations, it comes down to I think a lot of us, we tend to forget that we're talking to an undeveloped brain, right?
Yes.
Like a child will perceive reality much more differently than an adult will. So we could tell a child, don't unless somebody gets in your face, don't hit them. The child takes that messaging and says, oh, I can get in their face, therefore I can hit them. And you're like, well, how did you get that? How did you interpret what I said for what you said? And it's so
But the thing about it is children lie. I'm gonna just say
and children lie.
I'm gonna say it. They
look,
lie.
Look, let me tell you
a lot.
Look, we know. And I know people.
I was so embarrassed because I had this student who I love. Like, this is my girl. I'm like, she would never lie. And a student, and she did. She lied. And a student was like, he came to me and was like, Miss Muhammad, she really did lie though. I'm telling you the truth. She really did lie to you.
Wow.
And you know me, wanting to have faith because this is my girl. She would never lie to me. No, not my girl. And then she came back. I'm sorry, Miss Muhammad, I did lie. And she didn't have to lie. The lie was so bad because she came to me and lied. It wasn't like I asked her a question and she was afraid of my response and then lied to me. Like, you came to me with this lie and then your classmate was like, overheard and was like, that's not what happened, Miss Muhammad. And I'm like, she's like, yes, it is. And I'm like, well, don't call her a liar. Whole time he saw what happened. She came and lied to me. I'm over here defending you and you lying. So yeah,
it's sad. It's absolutely sad.
It's so hard to know who to trust.
Yeah.
Savagery in here.
Yeah. And you know what? More importantly, it's so hard to try to, have these conversations, right? Without you don't want to come across as the mean person in a situation like this, but you gotta let people know what the truth is. Children lie.
Yes, children steal.
That children can pick up a bad habit and they will hold on to that habit and they will continue to do it. Yep. And that children can be mischievous.
You give someone an inch, they're gonna take a mile.
Right. Some children are that way. And it comes down to knowing your child. Knowing your child or knowing the children around you. It's just like, when you are growing up, like your parents always looked at all of your friends around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And already, you and I have had this conversation where your mom could tell you, say, oh, she's gonna be a problem.
No, what she said was, that ain't your real friend. I don't like your little friend. I'm gonna let you know now. I don't like your little friend.
But you don't like your little friend. And I'm saying,
always the finger.
Right. But that's the point. Like, she saw something. And somewhere along the way, one of our watches said,
and I will say this too, Friday, some children are followers. So you could be teaching your child everything right, but if their friends are doing it and that's not all children, but I will say it's a lot. And I teach third grade, so that's why it's kind of ironic. But they will do things because their friends are doing it. And I love and appreciate those parents that will look their child in the eye and be like, don't you dare lie to me. Tell me the truth now. And then be like, so I'm raising you to be a follower now. I'm not teaching you to be an independent thinker, because that just goes to show me that they're actually trying to instill something in their child.
Right.
I strongly dislike a parent who automatically takes what their kid says at face value. Never do that. Even myself with my own son. I need to talk to a couple other people.
Right.
Because perception, what you perceived happened may look different to the other person.
Yep. There it is. There it is. I got to stop this conversation right here, but I appreciate you. We wanted to bring you on. I said, nobody else I want to have this conversation with other than Nira Muhammad, because she knows all too well about this whole thing, this scare straight tactic.
I was trying to get on here, but I had a student. Like,
it's all good. No, it's all good.
3:25. My kid was picked up at 4:12.
Let me tell you, it's all good because you're an educator. That's what happens. That's part of the role. So we appreciate your time. I appreciate you for giving your insight. And certainly we'll be bringing you back on very, very soon. Thank you so much. Continue the great work in the classroom that you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, folks. Man, oh man. What a great show. What a great show. I didn't get to my trends post and doing the most, but certainly we will bring that up to you tomorrow. Hopefully we have enough time. Speaking of tomorrow, let me just share with you who I got very quickly. We're going to have some dynamic Black entrepreneurs. These are young sisters. They run a program. They run a business called Sister Sweets. They do baking, but they provide baked goods. They do singing telegrams. I mean, these sisters are dynamic. They're going to talk to us about how they took their business from just their household all the way up. And just recently, they were providing some baked goods for the a ceremony for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson at the White House. So they got an incredible story. We're going to bring them on to talk about entrepreneurship and the value of youth entrepreneurship in the Black community. We'll have that conversation. So that's going to be happening tomorrow, and a whole lot of other great guests are going to be joining us. So I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in today. We truly, truly thank you. We want you to know that here at Black Star Network, every person counts, every like, every share counts. Every dime that you give to Black Star Network counts. That's why we always ask you at the end of the show, make sure you put something in the bucket to help us to grow. This is not about lining somebody else's pockets. This is about building out Black-owned media like the world has never seen. So go to blackstarnetwork.com. You can do that. Download the app. It's all free to download the app on your tablet, your phone, your Roku TV, your Apple TV, whatever TV you got, your Samsung, whatever TV you got, you can do that. If you can't give, share. Share the links, share the show, share all the programming, sharing the special editions that Brother Roland does. Share everything that comes from Black Star Network, because those shares help us to create the platform that we want and the platform that we need to tell our story. So blackstarnetwork.com. All right, that's going to do it for me. I thank each and every one of you. Stay tuned. Up next is Big Brother Roland Martin at the 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.